Welcome to the Deep Dive, the essential shortcut to becoming truly well-informed.
Today, we are wrestling with something pretty fundamental, actually. How do you measure user experience, UX, when you're talking about, well, millions, maybe even billions of users?
Exactly. Think about the old ways.
Yeah.
The lab coats, the stopwatches, watching 5 people click through something. That just completely falls apart when your lab is basically the entire internet population using a web app.
Yeah, you can't exactly invite everyone into the usability lab, can you? And that massive scale, that need for scalable measurement, that's really what pushed the teams at Google, folks like Kerry Rodden, Hillary Hutchinson, Jin Fu, to create the HEART framework.
And that's our focus for this deep dive. We're going to unpack HEART, those 5 user-centered categories. We'll also get into the goal signals metrics process, GSM, which is absolutely key. Plus, we'll look at some surprising real-world results, how it worked comparing AI tools, for instance, and even for government websites.
Okay, but before we jump into HEART itself, we need a bit of context. What came before? Well, Google, like most big tech companies, relied heavily on system metrics, often called PLC metrics.
Well, S, right? That's an acronym.
It is. Stands for page views, uptime, latency, 7-day active users, and earnings. Absolutely vital stuff for keeping the lights on.
For operational health, yeah.
Yeah.
Is the site up? Is it fast? Are we making money? You need those.
You absolutely do. But, and this is the crucial point, they're not great for understanding the quality of the user experience. They're often too low level, or they don't directly measure how the user feels or if they're actually succeeding.
So they tell you if it's working, but not how well it's working for the person using it.
Precisely. Take latency, the delay, basically. High latency, slow site. That's definitely bad UX, no question. But the latency metric itself just measures the system's lag. It doesn't quantify how frustrated someone gets waiting or if they just give up on a task because it's too slow. It's a system check, not a user feeling check.
And some of the others can be even trickier. Like page views. You see a big spike in page views.
Yeah, the business side might pop the champagne, right? Look, everyone loves the new feature.
But is it love? Or is it
Ah.
just confusion? Are people clicking around frantically because the interface is a mess and they can't find what they need? Page views alone don't tell you which it is.
That's a classic ambiguity. It could be good engagement or it could be terrible navigation. The raw number hides the why.
And 7-day active users. That tells you how many people showed up, but nothing about how engaged they were or if they're new users or loyal ones returning.
Right. You could have a huge churn problem like everyone from last week left and was replaced by new people this week, but the 7-day active number might look perfectly stable. It masks the underlying retention issue.
So Pulsey gives you the system's pulse, but not the user's heartbeat, so to speak.
That's a good way to put it. And that's exactly the gap HEART was designed to fill. It complements Pulsey. It brings in those user-centered metrics, mixing behavior, what people do with attitude, how people feel.
Okay, let's dig into it then. Starting with the H, happiness.
Happiness. Yeah, this is the subjective core. It's about user attitudes, satisfaction, things like, is it easy to use? Does it look good? Would you recommend it to a friend? That's the Net Promoter Score or NPS.
And since it's subjective, you have to ask the users directly, right? Surveys.
Primarily, yes. Large-scale surveys, often delivered right inside the product or maybe via email. You're trying to quantify those qualitative feelings.
Now, the Google teams learned something important about happiness, didn't they?
Yeah.
With the iGoogle redesign.
Oh, absolutely. Big lesson there. They rolled out a major redesign of the personalized homepage. And what happened immediately?
Satisfaction dropped.
Satisfaction dropped.
Naturally.
Now, the knee-jerk reaction is panic, right? Roll it back. They hate it.
Yeah, I can imagine the pressure.
But the research team knew about something called change aversion. People often just don't like change, even if the new thing is objectively better. They resist altering familiar habits.
So how did they know it wasn't just a genuinely bad design?
They tracked the metric over time. They didn't just look at the initial dip. And what they saw was that the satisfaction scores gradually climbed back up. They recovered, sometimes even exceeded the old levels.
Ah, okay. So the trend was the key, not the snapshot.
Exactly. That long-term recovery gave them confidence that the initial negativity was mostly just that change aversion noise. If they'd panicked based on day one, they'd have missed out on rolling out what turned out to be a better design in the long run.
Right, discipline with the data. Okay, moving to E.
Engagement. Engagement. This is about how involved users are. Frequency, intensity, depth of interaction. Critically, though, it's about interaction of their own volition. They're choosing to engage.
And this is where we ditch the raw totals, right? Unlike PLSE.
Absolutely crucial. Total visits mean nothing if your user base doubled. You have to normalize. Think visits per user per week or photos uploaded per user per day, average time spent per user. It isolates the intensity of use from just raw growth.
You mentioned the Gmail team using engagement predictively.
Yeah, that's a great example. They needed something better than just active users to understand long-term commitment. They figured, well, truly engaged users check email almost daily. It's a habit.
Makes sense.
So their metric became the percentage of active users who visited Gmail on 5 or more days during the last week. That specific frequency measure turned out to be way better at predicting who would stick around long term compared to just counting who logged in once.
Got it. Frequency is a signal of habit formation. Okay, next up, A for adoption.
Adoption. This is pretty straightforward. It's about new users. How many people started using your product or a specific feature within a certain time frame?
So new accounts created, people upgrading to the new version, users trying out that new filter you added.
Exactly. It directly tracks growth and helps distinguish new user activity from existing user activity, solving that Paulus ambiguity we talked about.
Now, the sources make a point here, differentiating adoption from pure UX. Why is that?
Yeah, that's an important nuance. Adoption is often seen more as a customer experience, CX metric, heavily influenced by things outside the product interface itself. Marketing campaigns, sales pushes, press coverage, hype.
Ah, so a big ad campaign could drive up adoption numbers even if the actual product experience isn't great yet.
Precisely. Marketing can get people in the door. You might see huge adoption numbers after a launch because of buzz, not because the sign-up flow is smooth or the features are intuitive.
So adoption gets them to try it.
But it doesn't mean they'll stay. If the underlying UX is bad, it's like a leaky bucket. Marketing fills it up, poor UX lets them drain right out.
Right.
Which leads us perfectly into our retention.
Retention. The flip side of adoption. Giving the users you've got loyalty, basically.
Right. It's the rate at which existing users keep coming back over time. You can think of it as the long-term outcome of good engagement. Are they sticking around?
And we measure this with things like churn rate, who stopped coming back, or renewal rates for subscriptions.
Exactly. Calculated over sensible periods, weekly, monthly, quarterly, maybe even annually for enterprise software contracts.
There was a really interesting example with Google Finance during the 2008 crisis, wasn't there?
Yeah.
How retention helped them understand a traffic spike.
Oh yeah, perfect illustration. Market goes wild, traffic to Google Finance spikes massively. PLSE just shows more traffic.
Doesn't tell you who was coming.
Right. Is it existing hardcore investors checking portfolios constantly? Or is it a flood of brand new people panicked by the news, signing up for the very first time? Totally different user groups, different needs.
So adoption metrics identify the new users.
Yes, and then retention metrics tracked how well that specific group stuck around after the initial crisis wave passed. Did the site convert those crisis-driven newcomers into long-term users?
So it allowed them to segment the spike and understand the behavior behind the numbers, not just the volume.
Exactly. Much deeper insight than just traffic is up.
Okay, last one. T for task success.
Task success. This feels like the most traditional UX metric, maybe.
Yeah.
It's all about efficiency and effectiveness. Can users actually accomplish their goals using the product, especially in task-focused areas, search, checkouts, upload flows, forms?
And it breaks down into specific components.
Yep, 3 main ones. Efficiency, how quickly can they do it, often measured as time on task. Effectiveness, what percentage of users actually complete the task successfully. And error rate, how often do things go wrong? Do they make mistakes, hit dead ends, encounter system errors?
And you can measure these things at scale through logs, right? Watching paths people take. Or maybe large remote tests.
Both. Log analysis is great for seeing if people follow the happy path or where they deviate. Remote usability testing at scale can get you those completion times and error rates on specific tasks.
The Google Maps example was about simplifying search boxes, I recall.
Right. They had 2 search boxes, one for general search, one specifically for local stuff. They hypothesized that a single smarter search box would be better, less confusing.
So they A/B tested it.
They did. And the key task success metric they watched was the error rate for searches. What they found was that users in the single box version adapted their search queries effectively. Crucially, they didn't make more errors or fail more often.
So the data showed the single box worked just as well, maybe better, in terms of successful task completion.
Exactly. That quantitative proof showing task success wasn't harmed gave them the confidence to remove the dual box and simplify the whole interface. The metrics validated the design decision.
Okay, that covers the 5 heart categories: happiness, engagement, adoption, retention, task success. But as you said earlier, just knowing the categories isn't enough. You can't just measure everything all the time.
No way. That leads straight to metric overload. Heart gives you the menu, but you need a way to order properly. That's where the goal signals metrics process GSM comes in. And honestly, here's where it gets really interesting. GSM is the engine.
Because it stops teams just jumping straight to metrics, building dashboards before they know what they're really trying to achieve.
Exactly that. It's so tempting. Engineers want to log data. Product managers love dashboards. The instinct is, let's measure stuff.
But metrics without goals are just noise.
Completely useless noise. GSM forces the team to step back and agree on the high-level user outcome first. What are we actually trying to improve for the user?
So it starts with G goals, broad qualitative aims.
Right. Use the heart categories as prompts. Instead of a goal like improve the app, maybe it's enhance user engagement by making feature X more discoverable, or increase task success for the checkout flow.
And the big pitfall is defining goals in terms of metrics you already have, like increase traffic by 10%.
Yes, that's a business goal, not a UX goal. GSM pushes you. How will improving the user experience lead to that 10% traffic increase? Are you trying to get existing users to come back more often, engagement retention, or attract new users, adoption? You need that clarity on the user change you're aiming for.
Once you have the goal, you move to S signals. What are the signs you're heading in the right direction?
Signals are the observable, measurable indicators, the evidence. If your goal is, say, make finding help easier, your signals might be fewer clicks on the Contact Us button, or shorter time spent on help pages, or maybe higher success rate using the FAQ search.
And choosing the right signals can be tricky. They need to be sensitive to design changes.
That's the key. If you change a button design, your signal needs to actually reflect whether that change helped or hurt. Sometimes prior research is needed to find good leading indicators. And sometimes, honestly, tracking failure is easier.
Failure signals. Like what?
Things like abandonment rates, how many people drop out of a sign-up flow at step 3, or counting undue actions, or how many times someone hits the back button during checkout. These negative signals are often logged easily and very clearly indicate points of friction or confusion.
Okay, goal defined, signals identified. Then finally, M metrics, turning those signals into hard numbers.
Exactly. The metrics are the specific quantitative measures you'll track on your dashboard. They flow directly from the signals.
And the advice here is normalize, normalize, normalize.
Always. No raw counts. Use percentages, ratios, averages per user, keeps things comparable over time as your user base changes. And, critically, resist the urge to add interesting stats. Only track metrics that directly relate back to your goal and signal, metrics that will actually help you make a decision.
Can we walk through a quick GSM example?
Sure. Let's say the goal is make the photo upload process feel easier and faster for users. Okay. What are potential signals that it's getting easier or faster?
Maybe fewer steps involved, fewer error messages people see, quicker completion time.
Good ones. So signals could be a reduction in user errors during upload, faster average upload completion time, higher percentage of uploads started that get finished. Now the metrics quantify those signals.
So metric 1 could be average time in seconds from initiating upload to successful completion. Metric 2, percentage of upload attempts resulting in an error message. Metric 3, percentage of users starting an upload who successfully complete it within 7 days.
Perfect. See how it flows. Goal leads to observable signals, which lead to concrete metrics. Every metric has a clear purpose tied back to the user experience aspiration. That's GSM in action.
That makes sense. It forces discipline. Now, what's fascinating here, you mentioned B2B earlier. How does this whole heart and GSM thing change when you're not dealing with consumers choosing to use an app, but employees required to use enterprise software?
Yes. The B2B and enterprise context, it changes quite a bit, actually. The whole dynamic shifts when usage isn't voluntary.
Because the user doesn't have a choice. They have to use it for their job.
Exactly. So some heart categories become much less relevant, or their meaning changes. The sources strongly suggest de-emphasizing or even dropping adoption and engagement as primary user-level metrics in B2B.
Why drop those?
Well, think about adoption. In B2B, the company adopts the software, right? The decision is made at a business level, maybe by procurement or IT. The individual end user doesn't adopt it in the same way a consumer chooses an app.
Okay, that makes sense for adoption. What about engagement? They're using it.
They're using it because it's their job. The voluntary volition aspect of engagement disappears. They're engaged because they have to be to complete their tasks. Measuring time spent might just reflect task complexity or inefficiency, not user satisfaction or choice.
So if adoption and engagement are less useful for the individual B2B user, what do you focus on?
It really boils down to two main things: happiness and task success.
Happiness, even if they're forced to use it.
Yes, but it's a different flavor of happiness. It's more about their attitude towards this tool they must use. Is it making their job harder or easier? Is it frustrating? Does it feel efficient? Even if they don't love it, measuring their sentiment is still important for morale and productivity.
And task success becomes even more critical, I imagine.
Absolutely paramount. Can the user do their job efficiently and effectively using this tool? That's the bottom line in D2B. Can they process those invoices quickly? Can they find the customer record without errors? High task success is a direct business benefit, even if the user interface isn't winning any design awards.
Does that focus on task success create challenges for testing in B2B? Enterprise apps can be incredibly complex with hundreds of different tasks.
Huge challenges. First, just figuring out which tasks are the truly critical ones to benchmark requires a lot of internal investigation. You can't test everything.
And finding participants. You can't just grab people off the street.
Exactly. Forget standard consumer panels. They don't have specialized roles like supply chain logistics coordinator for automotive parts. Researchers often have to get creative lean on sales teams for customer contacts, use LinkedIn heavily, sometimes even recruit people at industry conferences. Getting genuine B2B users for testing is tough.
So, besides the B2B specifics, are there other common traps teams fall into when trying to implement HART in GSM?
Oh, yes. The sources highlight 4 main pitfalls that teams really need to watch out for.
Okay, lay them on us. Pitfall number 1.
Metric overload. It's just so easy with 5 HART categories in the GSM process to end up trying to measure absolutely everything. You get these overwhelming dashboards with dozens, maybe hundreds of metrics.
And then nothing gets focused on because there's too much noise.
Precisely. The solution is ruthless prioritization, driven by GSM. You probably don't need metrics from all 5 HART categories for every single project. Focus on the few key metrics tied to your most important goals. Maybe have a primary dashboard for decision-making metrics and a secondary one for diagnostics or less critical stuff.
Makes sense. What's pitfall number 2?
The opposite problem, in a way. Single metric tunnel vision. This is the lore of the North Star metric, the idea that you can find one single number that represents all of UX quality.
Which sounds appealingly simple, but
It's incredibly dangerous. No single metric can capture the richness and complexity of user experience. And worse, if you optimize obsessively for just one metric, you inevitably start gaming it. That's good Hart's Law, right?
when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. Can you give a UX example?
Sure. Let's say your North Star is average session duration. The team might be tempted to intentionally add friction, like unnecessary clicks, slow animations, confirmation dialogues, just to keep users artificially engaged longer and inflate that number.
So they hit the target, but the actual experience gets worse.
Exactly. You need balancing metrics. If you track session duration, you also need to track task completion rates or satisfaction scores to make sure you're not just making things slower and more annoying.
Okay. Overload and tunnel vision. Pitfall 3.
Neglecting team involvement. If the UX team or maybe an executive just defines the metrics in a vacuum and hands them down, you won't get buy-in. Engineers, product managers, marketers, they need to be part of the definition process.
So those GSM workshops, defining the goals and signals together, are critical for building consensus.
Absolutely non-negotiable. If everyone participates in defining what success looks like from a user perspective, they're much more likely to trust the data later, even if it tells them something they didn't expect or want to hear. It builds shared ownership.
Got it. And the last pitfall. Number 4.
This one's maybe a bit more nuanced. Ethical implications. We have to remember that metrics are always just proxies for complex human behavior and feelings. They aren't the reality itself.
Meaning?
Well, take time spent again. In an educational app, more time might genuinely mean deeper learning, which is good. But in a social media app or a game, is more time always positive? Or could it signal addiction, difficulty navigating, unhealthy usage patterns.
Right. The metric value itself doesn't tell you the quality or the consequence of that behavior.
Exactly. Teams need to look beyond just maximizing the number. They need to consider the potential negative outcomes, the long-term impact on users. Is this engagement actually beneficial and healthy? You often need qualitative research alongside the quantitative metrics to understand that deeper story.
That's a really important point. Okay, we've got the framework, the process, the pitfalls. Let's see it in action. You mentioned comparing AI tools.
Yes, a great recent example. Researchers took two large language models being used for generating recipes. They got 100 home cooks, task was holiday recipes, and they measured the experience using Heart.
Okay, so head-to-head comparison. How did Happiness H look?
Bard came out significantly ahead on Happiness. Its Net Promoter Score was 36.63 versus 21.57 for the competitor ChatGPT in this study. The researchers pinpointed a key signal. Bard's initial recipe suggestions were much more concise.
Concise. Why did that matter so much for Happiness?
Less cognitive load. The competitor sometimes gave these long, rambling lists. Bard was more focused, users felt less overwhelmed, could process the suggestions easier, and that translated directly into higher reported satisfaction. They could appreciate the AI's novelty more.
Interesting. And did that connect to the behavioral metrics like task success, T?
It did, strongly. Bard also had a much higher task success rate. 81% of users got a usable recipe first try, compared to only 65% for ChatGPT.
And what drove that higher success? Was it engagement?
It seems linked to a specific engagement feature. Bard offered a better, more context-aware list of category suggestions right at the start, little clickable prompts. This small design choice encouraged 39% of Bard users to click a suggestion versus only 12% for ChatGPT.
So better initial prompting led to more effective engagement, which led to higher task success.
Exactly. A nice chain reaction. And the dissatisfaction signals showed up in adoption and retention-related metrics, too. Well, if having to type a whole new command can signal you didn't get what you wanted the first time, ChatGPT users did that twice as often. It suggests more initial failure or dissatisfaction.
And retention. The likelihood to use it again.
Clear difference there, too. Over 10% of the ChatGPT users explicitly said they wouldn't use it again for recipes. For Bard, that number was only 3%. So across Happiness, task success, and projected retention, Heart provided a structured way to see Bard was delivering a better UX in this specific context.
That's a compelling comparison. Now, the second case study sounds quite different, a government website. Indonesia.travel.
Yes, this one is fascinating because it highlights how context dramatically changes which Heart metrics matter most. This was a quantitative study, surveyed 260 users of the official Indonesian tourism site. The goal was to see which Heart factors predicted intention to reuse the site.
So what makes someone come back to a government tourism portal?
Well, here's the surprising part, the really contradictory finding compared to typical consumer apps.
Okay.
Happiness and adoption were found to have no significant statistical impact on whether someone intended to reuse the service.
By what? So how happy they felt using it, or whether they were a new user?
Yeah.
None of that mattered for predicting if they'd come back. That feels wrong based on everything we usually hear about UX.
It feels wrong for voluntary consumer apps, maybe, but for this GDC government-to-citizen service, the data was clear. Initial feelings and newbie status didn't drive loyalty.
So what did predict reuse then?
Only 3 factors were significant: engagement, retention, and overwhelmingly, task success.
And how dominant were they?
Task success was the heavyweight champion, influencing intention to reuse by about 40%. Retention was next, around 30%. Engagement played a smaller role, maybe 10%.
Wow. So for a government service, it really comes down to, can I get my task done effectively? And is the site reliable enough that I trust I can do it again next time?
That seems to be the core user psychology here. When you need a service, like getting visa info, maybe paying a bill on another government site, your primary driver isn't delight or visual appeal. It's, does this thing work? Can I achieve my goal without friction?
So high reliability, predictability, low error rates, that's the good UX in this context.
Right.
Finding info easily, knowing you can store it or come back to it, retention, and just successfully completing the task success.
Exactly. The user isn't necessarily looking for fun, they're looking for function. In this GBC space, basic, reliable functionality seems to be the key driver of repeat usage, much more than initial subjective happiness. Lack of failure becomes the benchmark for success.
Okay, let's try and wrap this all up. We've covered a lot of ground. Heart provides these 5 lenses: happiness, engagement, adoption, retention, task success.
Right, a user-centered framework. But it needs the goals, signals, metrics process, the GSM engine, to actually make it work effectively and avoid those pitfalls like overload or tunnel vision.
And we've seen it applied in very different contexts, comparing cutting-edge AI tools, where things like concise responses impacted happiness and task success.
And evaluating a government website where the fundamental drivers shifted towards reliability, task success, and retention, while initial happiness didn't seem to matter for predicting reuse.
It really underscores that HEART is versatile, but needs thoughtful application via GSM. It gets you from those high-level qualitative goals down to specific, actionable, quantitative metrics.
And crucially, as you said, it forces that upfront alignment on goals. You remain data-informed, guiding the process with your design expertise, rather than being purely data-driven by whatever metric happens to be going up or down.
So the final takeaway for our listeners.
I think it comes back to that G2C study and its surprising result. If initial happiness and adoption don't predict reuse for a necessary service, but efficiency and reliability do, what does that really imply?
Imply for what?
Imply for how we measure the UX of things people have to use. Think about corporate internet sites, healthcare portals, tax filing software, mandatory training modules. Does the user's fundamental need for the service to just work outweigh their immediate feelings about the interface when it comes to driving long-term value and repeat usage?
That's a really provocative thought. It forces you to reconsider priorities.
Exactly. So the question to leave everyone with is, based on this, if you look at a project you're involved in right now, especially if it involves necessary tasks, which metrics that you currently track might you actually discard? And which ones maybe focus purely on efficiency and task completion should you perhaps prioritize much, much higher?
A challenging question for anyone measuring UX. Food for thought indeed.
Definitely.
Thanks for diving deep with us today. We'll catch you next time.